Well, hi online community, digital space, however we identify. What I do love about the space is this is where my wife has also made her home, is in the digital space. So allow me just to say, hello wifey. Okay, so today we're talking about communication between you and me, between God and you, between others in our space. And so we're going to unpack what does our communication look like with God, in our marriages, and with others. Now, back in 1989, and I know I'm giving my age away, when I started out my tertiary education, one of our filler compulsory courses one had to do, irrespective of the degree or diploma you were studying, was Communication 101. And for me, an interesting concept that was taught to us, that there were two parts to communication as we knew it. One was verbal, the other was non-verbal, which was kind of new to me at the time. Interestingly, back then the split was 80-20, in favor of non-verbal communication. Today, if you look at it, the split has been adjusted to 92-8 in favor of non-verbal communication. And this leads me to say this: our actions speak louder than our words. I want to look at three areas, as I mentioned earlier today, where communication or the lack thereof can have a negative effect on our daily lives. And that's God, marriage, and other relationships. That's like business, family, and friends. But let's start off with our communication with God. How many times have we heard someone say, why would God want to speak to me? I'm not a preacher or in full-time Christian service. Why in the world would he want to communicate with me? Well, the truth is, we are all saved by grace. We're all children of God. So, as being children of God, fathers naturally want to speak to their children. Unfortunately, we see ourselves as less than. And when we do this, we wonder why a great, magnificent God would ever want to speak to us. In that case, God could scream loud in our ears, but we would not hear him. We must see ourselves as God sees us. That is, as children who need him to speak, who need to listen, who need guidance every day. And if we have a poor or diminished image of ourselves, wondering why the God who created the heavens and the earth would engage in meaningful conversation with insignificant us, then communication shuts down to minimal levels at best. It all depends, I would say, on relationship. We are children, as I said, children of God, and our Father eagerly wants to communicate with us. If we go to the Psalms, it provides us with insight to God's perfect knowledge of us, his abundant love for us, just the way we are. He knows how we are made. He knows our weakness. He knows our sinful desires. He knows our innermost hurts, fears, frustrations. All of this, he still wants to communicate with us. Jesus, for example, has chosen to put his unmatched presence into these scarred earthen vessels, breakable things. He's at home in this tattered, tainted, earthly tent, which we call a body. We need to be uncomfortable, or should I say, we don't need to be uncomfortable or out of place, but instead, we need to just relax and enjoy having fellowship with him, knowing that he died for us while we were still those hopeless sinners. He has permanently accepted us into his family. With all our undesirable baggage, we are his, lock, stock, and barrel. This leads me to this question: how can I enrich my time, my alone time with God? If we look at the book of James, and this is Jesus' brother, he says, draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. Have you ever sat down in a quiet place with your Bible, ready to have a quiet time, or as we sometimes say, devotional time, but you feel aimless? Maybe you flipped through the pages and finally settled on a psalm or settled on some scripture, but then you remembered, oh, I've got another appointment. So you said a quick prayer and told yourself, oh, I'll pray more later. But it never happens. You're not alone. And if you feel frustrated with the quality of time or your time and times of communication with God, as much as you may desire real intimacy, remember that he longs for it even more. I'll remind you of what Jesus' brother said. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. It does help to get some direction on how to develop a close walk with God. So specific goals can help you focus on meaningful communication with God, either through prayer or reading the Bible. First, let me say this. Select a plan that fits your lifestyle, a level of your understanding. Remember, spending time with God will almost never just fit in to your daily routine. You must schedule and then jealously guard your time in communication with God. The more you honor that appointment, the greater you will desire to protect it. And then the greater your enrichment. As you read the Bible, have a notebook and a pen ready to write or journal. Some people, like my wife, also journal their prayers. I'm brought to just to remembrance a couple of months ago. Nola said to me, God has answered this prayer. I remember writing it a couple years ago, and she went to her journals and there it was. And this is just but one example of a plan. Like I mentioned, select a plan that fits your lifestyle. When you start doing this, then open your time, open your life and your heart, and expect God's involvement in your life. So that's communication with God. And then I want to talk about communication in marriage or partnerships. And this is a big one. Communication is the most important skill you can have. And yes, it's a skill. It's something that we have to learn. I want to quickly cite Proverbs chapter 18, verses 20 to 22. It says this: a man's stomach, don't just look at my big one, but a man's stomach shall be satisfied from the fruit of his mouth. From the produce of his lips he shall be filled. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat his fruit. And then interestingly enough, the next verse says, he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. But we won't talk about that one today. Fruit. Yeah, what does this mean? It means it's a seed-bearing entity. And so every word that we speak is a seed that is going to come back to us. This is what this is saying. When you understand the power of words, you plant good seeds, your stomach is going to be filled, and you're going to have a good life. However, there are good seed, bad seed. There's life seed and there's death seed. And so we have to, with our mouths, have the ability to kill people. We actually can kill people by what we say. We have with our mouths the ability to give life to people. And God wants to use your mouth to give life. You have to decide how to use your mouth, for life or for death. So this year, Nola and I will celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary in June. And I'm quite excited about that. 30 years, wow. Hasn't been plain sailing. But I must admit, there's been times that I killed her with my mouth and with my non-verbal communication. She could see it on my face and in my actions, and I just didn't recognize it. She would always say, if only I could just take a picture to show you what you're communicating to me. And remember, back then there was no cell phones with cameras. And so I just denied it, which just caused more problems for us. So I want to quickly look at levels of communication. And I've identified 6 that I want to share with you today. That's basic information, partnership, conflict resolution, connection, personal information, and then intimate communication. So let's look at basic information. And this is the easiest in marriage. It's where you say, dinner's ready, hi, I'm home, or the kids are on the roof again. Just that basic stuff, everyday kind of stuff, and just basic information. And then number 2, partnership. We communicate because we're partners. First of all, we need to meet each other's needs. This includes finances, responsibility, children. We have a partnership here. And so we need to be talking so that we can partner on these matters. Then number 3, conflict resolution. And yeah, I'm going to whet your appetite a bit today. That's a huge one. And so I'm going to park it for today. And in our next session, we're going to unpack conflict resolution. The next one is connection. There's a lot of times when we're communicating, we don't think about this, that I'm trying to connect. Research proves that, first of all, the easier you are to connect to as a spouse, the better your marriage is going to be. The harder you are to connect with, the worse your marriage is going to be. In the average meal when you're sitting with your spouse, where we sit face to face and we have a meal, we will connect over 100 times through a look, through a word, through a laugh, through a touch. We connect. This is the reasons that we communicate. So here's an interesting finding in some recent research as to the barriers to this connection. Facebook especially is the cause of 25% of couples to fight every week. Almost 40% of divorces are listed as caused by Facebook. shockingly. 1 out of every 7 spouses has seriously considered divorce because of the social media habits of their spouse. So technology and social media have been devastating on marriages. So here's the issue. I'm trying to connect with you, but you connecting with everyone else. I mean, I remember a time where telephones were connected to the wall. I remember where you couldn't take them with you. When you went in the car, when you went on a date, you were alone. When you were in a restaurant, you were alone. Today, we're never alone because we have this phone. We're connected to the entire universe. I want to connect to you, but you're always on your phone, always looking at your phone, always texting, always posting on social media or something like that. This is a major issue because communication is about connection, and we have to be able to connect. Then personal information. It's where you say, I want to tell you something about myself. Now, this is where communication gets really good. It's words like, I trust you. I love you. I want to tell you something about what's going on in here. And then there's the intimate communication where I want to tell you something about you. I want to tell you how much I love you, why I love you, why I'm glad I'm married to you, and all those things like that. So those are the reasons we communicate. But what you need to understand is this. Communication, if it fails on one of those levels, it's going to fail and affect every other level. Let me give you an example real quick. The number one reason we communicate is basic information, as I mentioned, and then it's the easy one. But number 2 is partnership. And if we fail on the basic stuff, how do you expect us to connect on the real meat, if I can put it like that, the partnerships and all the others? And this is what naturally happens in a marriage. So I'm going to look quickly at 4 needs of a woman and 4 needs of a man that actually help us understand this. So for a woman, this is what a woman really looks for, or female. Security. A woman feels most secure when she has a selfless, sacrificial husband. She feels least secure when she has a selfish, detached husband. As a young husband, I was completely selfish, if I have to be honest with you. Detached from Nola. I used to play golf. I used to go out with my mates all the time. And Nola was completely insecure while she was taking care of our children alone. The second one, a woman needs us to be open and honest in our communication. Now, men, that's generally really hard for us to understand in most cases. So just take it as it is. Be honest and open with your spouse. And then soft, non-sexual affection. This is even harder for us to understand, but women need soft, non-sexual affection. And then leadership. They don't want to be dominated. They want to be an equal. But they want their husband to be a loving initiator through the finances, spirituality, the children, romance, not just the sex, and things like that. Leadership. They want you to be the loving initiator of that. So those are the 4 for women. And here's the ones that we men, and they're completely different that we have, the needs we have. Firstly, we want to be honored and respected. Men, this is our number 1 need. We want to be respected. And we're very, very sensitive in that area about our egos. A lot of women will just say, you've just been big babies. Well, we really are. I mean, we really are, ladies. You can just give us one look and we'll be devastated. I mean, we're very sensitive in that area and it's legitimate. That's just how we're wired. Then number 2, for men, it's sex. Most men are more sexual than their wives. Let's just leave that there. Friendship. Nola always says, when she explains to people, we were friends before we got married. We want to be friends with you, with our wives. We want to be your buddies. That's how we fell in love with you. We like hanging out with you. You're our favorite person, but we don't want to be mothered. We had a mother and we don't want another one. I think I'm going to stop right there because I can even feel the tension here in the studio, and I know you already getting a bit tense. And then the last one is domestic support. Please hear me what I'm saying here. We want our wives to be domestically centered, not at home, in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant. No. Even if you work outside the home. Why? Because women have a gift of nesting. It's amazing, men. We don't have that gift. When men make a bed, for example, my wife hates it when I make a bed. I just throw the pillow there, but they put 10 pillows. It's boring for us. But let me say this. I'm not advocating that men don't help out around the house. There's some equality there. Okay, so security, open, honest communication, soft, non-sexual affection, leadership. Those are the needs women have. Men, honor, respect, sex, friendship, domestic support. So, to be happily married, you have to meet the needs you don't have. When we got married, if I could meet my own needs, I wouldn't then be needed to be married. I'd just live the rest of my life because I could meet my own needs. The reason I'm married is because I couldn't meet my own needs. Now, I'm sworn to fidelity. Not only am I married to you, and you need to meet my needs, I'm sworn to fidelity. I can't shop at any other stores. I have to shop at your store. Before I got married, I kind of came to your store, looked in the window and thought, this was really good store. And I liked what you had there. But now when I tell you, you need to shut down, when I tell you what I don't like or what's not pleasing to me, you shut down on me. You judge me. You call me names. You reject me. And this works both ways, men and women. And this just shuts down communication on every level. Marriage is about becoming one. The question is which one? we get married and we shame each other. We reject each other. And what we're trying to do is to try and make you normal like me. When I first got involved with Nola, she comes from this huggy family. And I just couldn't actually handle that. But what I realized that it actually unlocked something that was natural within me. No aspersion to my family, but we just weren't the huggy. I didn't grow up in the huggy environment. Now, as people say, I'm the biggest cuddly huggy bear you can find. The surest way to try if you have your marriage fail is to try to change the unchangeable. And the unchangeable reality of marriage is you're different by God's design. The only way that marriage works is to go into your spouse's world to meet their need. And you don't have. That's why it makes you happy, because you are able to do that. We serve in each other. To do that, you have to accept that what they're saying is being valid. When we shut them down, communication, as I say, on any level affects every level. And when you reject my needs, you reject me. And when you're rejecting me, it's hard for me to open up my heart and communicate on these levels. You have to have a servant spirit. Only selfish people are miserable in marriage because why? They won't serve. But the only way you can succeed in marriage is to have a servant spirit. Two servants in one equals the greatest marriage, friendship, partnership in the world. So here's 4 keys to a successful communication in our marriage. The right tone, enough time, atmosphere of trust, and the spoken truth in love. The right tone. You have to begin with the right tone. I'm going to try hard to illustrate the right tone with the exact same 3 things I'm going to say. Every time I say it, it's going to mean something different. I'm going to try. I practiced in the mirror before this. So here's the first time. It says this. Okay, I'll do it. I understand. Here's number 2. Okay, I understand. I'll do it. And here's number 3. Okay, I understand. I'll do it. Happy, frustrated, angry. I hope I portrayed that well in my tone. I said the exact same thing 3 times, having been something different every time. Tone communicates care. It's impossible to communicate with a person who doesn't care. The tone of your voice tells me if you care or not. And if you don't care, it means you're going to be impossible for me. It's going to be impossible for me to communicate with you. Tone is also encrypted. Let me talk to the differences about men and women I mentioned earlier. The woman's number 1 need is the need for security. A man's number 1 is for respect. If you're ever going to communicate with a woman, your tone has to communicate security to her. Here's how it goes. Doesn't matter the words you're saying. Doesn't matter the conversation. The tone of your voice needs to communicate this. You're first. I'll say no to everybody. I will not say no to you. What makes women feel insecure is when we're saying, what do you want? What do you want? You're a distraction right now. It's a burden right now. You'll never successfully communicate with your spouse or with your wife if the tone of your voice is communicating anything but security to her. When you're communicating to a man, you have to communicate respect. So the tone of your voice when you're communicating with a man can completely turn a man off just by the tone of your voice. When you're communicating with him, you have to have this, I believe in you. You're a good man. I'm glad I'm married to you. You have what it takes. Man. I respect you. When he hears that, it calms him down. Security calms down a woman or your wife and allows them to hear what you are saying or communicating. Respect calms a man down and allows him to hear. So, enough time is the next one. One of the reasons that we have a bad tone with each other is because we don't have enough time to communicate. Let me quickly talk about the three different types of time that you need to communicate in. You need proactive communication. What that means is communicating in advance. Communicating in advance. Now, proactive means you're going to talk about this thing before it happens. If you don't have proactive communication time in your marriage, you're then going to have reactive communication time, and that becomes toxic very quickly. Another type of time is personal communication time. Face-to-face communication. No phones, no computers, no tablets, no children, no TV, absolutely no distraction. Let me say this. If you can't turn off your phone, you don't own it. It owns you. And the third type is intimate communication. Intimate communication time. That is telling each other why you love each other. Being affectionate with each other verbally. They say 5 minutes of intimate communication time of a day will resurrect a dead marriage. Sometimes the reason relationships wilt or die is just simply we're not saying the words we used to say. Get back to basics. We need to have the right tone. You need to have enough time. And here's the third, the atmosphere of trust. You're not going to open your heart to someone you don't trust. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 24 to 25, it says this, "For this cause a man will leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. They two shall become one flesh. The man and his wife were both naked and unashamed." You cannot be intimate in your marriage with someone you don't trust. Marriage only works when you're careful about your behavior and you take responsibility for what you do. And then the last one is truth spoken in love. This is about conflict resolution. And as I said earlier, I don't want to unpack it in this session. I'm whetting your appetite for next session. So we're going to tackle conflict resolution. So we spoke about our relationships with God, in our marriages and our relations. And now we're going to talk about other relationships very quickly. Remember that effective communication is the cornerstone of success in our personal and our professional interactions. If you do some research on the best practices around communication, you'll find the best 5, the most effective 4, and so on and so on. The list is numerous. But for us today, I just want to touch on 3. We need to be clear. There needs to be clarity in our communication. It must be correct, we must be honest, and compassionate communication. Clarity ensures that the message is easily understood by the person listening to or receiving your message. Use simple language, avoid jargon, be concise, because when you're ambiguous, this leads to confusion and misinterpretation. I love what Paul says to the church in Colossae. It says, "Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer each person," seasoned with salt. And then correctness, being honest. Correctness or honesty involves accuracy in your conveying information. Also verify facts. You know, on social media today, there's a lot of unvariable stuff going around. It's not verified. Use appropriate tone and language. Incorrect information erodes trust and credibility, can I say. And I love what Paul says to the church in Ephesus. He says, "Therefore, putting away falsehood, let each one of you speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another." And then lastly, compassion. Compassionate communication. It considers the emotions and well-being of others. Now, I'm an empath by nature, so I'm listening to what you're telling me, but not with your words. So you got to listen actively. Show empathy and acknowledge feelings. Avoid judgment and criticism. Instead, offer support and encouragement. Compassion fosters trust, respect, and stronger interpersonal connections. And Paul puts it so beautifully here in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. He says, be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. So how's your communication with God? How's your communication in your marriage or your partnership? How's your communication with others? Do you need to work at it? We'll see you next week.